we're like that little younger brother of the Middle East BU. So we aspire to be bigger, but right now we are much smaller than they are. But yes, I think we're headed in the right direction. So yeah, clearly what you said, Dr. Sriram, it resonates very well with all of us. I still remember several months ago, I met Deepak very briefly when I was in Chennai, and Deepak had already, come into his new avatar, and we were having this discussion with regards to how he, or rather, it was in Sharjah. I was still in Sharjah. Deepak had come visiting, and so Deepak spoke about all of these new initiatives that he had taken as part of the UAE and Middle East team, where as a result of process improvement, our colleagues in the Middle East team were able to do a substantial or able to make a substantial improvement to the way we do business or the way we transact business and complete our projects. Africa is an enigma. It continues to be an enigma for all of us, including myself. I feel a little bit more at home because it's been more than 15 years since I've been visiting and managing business in the continent in one way, shape, or form. So I feel a little better. I do know a few words of Arabic. It helps me in North Africa. I understand a few words of French. It also helps me a bit. I haven't learned Swahili or any of the other languages or Zulu. So it does not help me much in the southern part of the continent. However, the good thing is mostly it's Anglophone. At least the staff that we employ essentially speak English. So it's easy for us to communicate. However, it is a challenging continent. It is not a continent which is easy. The nature of our business also, Dr. Sriram, as you will see over the course of the next 3 days, is absolutely brand new because we typically enter a country where there is one or two or maybe four opportunities. Sometimes, like in the case of Malawi, the two opportunities that came along, we took them and then we left. We have actually closed the office there. And then we moved into a new country adjacent to it or nearly adjacent in Botswana. And now we have moved into Mozambique. So it's a path of discovery. It's constantly finding our place, constantly finding ways to tackle the new ecosystem that we are confronted with, new vendors, new ways of doing business. We went into Egypt. Egypt was another set of challenges. So over the last 6 years, we've, the voyage has taken us to different places, showed up challenges which are very different. So process somehow or the other took a very, very deep backseat. It was not something that I think as a business unit we ever focused on. So we kind of just took whatever we got from our past, which was, of course, good enough in some respects, because being in L&T, it's an 80-year-old history and a legacy, and there's a lot, just because by virtue of the fact that you are in L&T. How did we implement that? Well, I'm guessing it's a mixed report. It's not the best implementation, but the challenges are so many, and I don't envy any of my project managers. When they get up every morning, they absolutely don't know what they're going to face because there is no support system in place. When we work in a geography like India, where we belong or where we come from, where we originate, these support systems are so enormous and so good that there is comfort all around. You know that if you slip, there is something that will, some kind of a stop. It will decelerate you. It will hold you. In Africa, unfortunately, and that's the nature of the beast, right? Being the Christopher Columbus of L&T, PTND goes on, and we enter these countries, and the challenges keep coming, and they come thick and fast. So you have to be extremely resilient. And I'm very proud of all of my project managers. They've shown me time and time again how they can confront, how they can overcome. But yes, the net result is mixed. It's a mixed bag. I'm proud of the fact that we're in 10 countries. I'm proud of the fact that the team does a brilliant job of what they set out to do. However, are we successful? I would put a very big question mark. To be successful, I guess process has to take over. And while the process is there, we're unable to implement it. a lot of good young talent coming in as planning engineers, and they struggle sometimes because, again, these are definitions that are typical to L&T. A planning engineer is also supposed to be a document clerk. He's also supposed to do invoicing, and sometimes planning takes a back seat, really. And it's after Prapti and the central planning cell came in with a great initiative by TMD, that we actually started looking on a real time basis at what was our performance. What is it that we were doing? What is it that we were doing right? And what is it that we weren't doing? So, a lot of good intention, and eventually, like I said, a mixed bag. Sometimes you're very successful, but we're always not on time. So that becomes our biggest bottleneck. Today, if I want to stand up and say, okay, you know what, I did this project on time, I will search and I will come up with nothing. So that kind of puts a bit of a, let's say a cloudy cover on all the good work that we do. So I'm really looking forward, and this is my expectation. Whether it is implementing digitalization, implementing better communication, implementing prefab and modular, doing planning in the real sense, planning, not feeding invoices into our ERP. So stuff like that, which actually he'll help us become a better organization, more streamlined. Look at the Middle East BU. That's a great example to see. We finished the job before time. The client gave us a certificate. We finished this job also on time. So we don't have those kind of things to say about these 30 projects that we have across the continent. And I would love to say that. So I'm hoping, that we kind of introspect a lot, and of course, implement the processes that exist, improve on the processes that we can improve on, bring in measurements, hold people more accountable. Departmental work, somehow or the other, I've really struggled. Every time we go in for a bid, we kind of hope that the subcontractors work as though they were L&T. They don't, and that's the truth, right? However, we have that strength. We have an inherent strength in us to departmentally execute and departmentally execute it better. Do we do it? I don't see it. I really don't see it. And so these are the things that, they always keep challenging. Just imagine that we finish projects on time, right? So we save immediately in terms of the money that we're spending, the bleeding that just incessantly keeps continuing. All of this has to, somehow or the other, be brought under control. Resources. We have brilliant resources, but they're sort of constantly struggling, unable to get out of a situation easily. All of this requires some kind of process. So I'm a strict believer in process, and that's what even in my past life in other companies that I've worked, SOPs kind of determine how good you are. Again, of course, implementing SOPs requires measurement, requires accountability, because people have to understand that if there is a check and a balance, then and only then will we improve. If people are actually judging us on how we perform against a set process, is when you can measure. However, if the only objective is to start and finish at some point in history, that's or in the future, that doesn't give you good control. That doesn't give you a healthy feeling. That doesn't make you feel very good inside. So yeah, hoping that this session, Dr. Sriram, with you will allow us to streamline, will allow us to bring our organization to the level which can truly be called L&T class, because we are there, but we're not there. So the intentions are the best. And like I said, a challenging environment, very, very good people. The best that you will find in the world, they work with us. But, as part of our team. But we're still kind of missing the boat, missing it here, missing the target there, missing it once again. So that we need to get out of our system. We need to be able to do things right the first time, because that's the best way. You do it right the first time, and you're an absolute winner. Nobody's ever going to be able to stop you. So we've done that in terms of securing business. We went into Africa. Everybody had doubts. And I'm not going to, make a list because it's an endless list of people who had huge doubts whether we will ever succeed in Africa. So we've gone in, we've succeeded to a very large extent in terms of gaining a great market share thanks to our proposals team, thanks to the other people who support the proposals team and make it happen. But generating profit, which for us today as L&T is the most important thing. The reason why we are in business is because we bring in a profit, bring in a margin, bring in a profit on the investments made by our shareholders. 1 million shareholders, we are answerable to them. We need to make sure that we do the right thing, we do it properly, we do it as a process. So, yeah, I can talk for very long. This is a subject which is very, very close to my heart, but you guys have a challenging assignment ahead of you. I wish all the attendees a lot of luck, and happy learning. And as I always believe, the more you ask questions, the better you will learn. So please disturb Dr. Sriram. Please ask him questions. Please understand as best as you can. And I would really like to thank Deepak and his team for taking on this initiative. It's really good. I mean, I admire Deepak. He has done great things in his career, and so wish you all great time together. Good 3 days. I will join in once again when our IC head TMD is also there. So wish you all good luck. All the very best. Have a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for that motivating speech. Okay, so I think before I hand over to Dr. Sriram, so let me just brief what are going to be the proceedings for the 3 days and what we intend to do during these 3 days. So RSI mentioned mainly on the timely completion. Okay, so we also don't have any other intent beyond timely completion. We also want to complete the projects on time, and that can be brought through a process improvement. That is something I strongly believe because I have seen success in other BUs where a little bit of process change has brought in lot of saving in number of days. Whether we do talk of a procurement or we talk of a construction, if we change our internal processes without doing much of the thing, we can really bring in or crash the schedule. So this is on that. So today's session is mainly going on a theory part. So theoretically we'll be talking on what are the process improvement steps and all, so which Dr. Sriram will be taking through you. And then we move to a project specific ones on the day 2 and day 3. So we had a deeper study on all the Prapti reports to the extent possible, maybe from each country 2 or 3 reports we have studied. We have tried to analyze, we have tried to see where the delays are happening, and we also compared with other views. In some of the areas where other views have done better, we have tried to just make out or just try to summarize, discuss with Dr. Sriram and try to see a way forward. But I just don't want to put those numbers or those things to you. I want it to be discovered by you while we are discussing. So we'll talk about each process during day 2 and day 3 for specific jobs. Like we start with, let us say, engineering, then we go to procurement, and we start and you start discovering what are the areas where you need to improve. And then you only give a solution which is the best way to improve. So when the problem and solution both come from your end, the buy-in will be better across the team and the implementation can be really seen in next 2 to 3 months down the line. So if we give a prescription totally, this is how you have to do, I don't think there will be buy-in. So this process is all about that you accept something and you start implementing something. So I think over to you, Dr. Sriram. I think you can start with your session. And just to tell you, this is a very rich group with a lot of experience. Our segment heads are there, our supply chain head, our engineering head for Africa, and various project managers, planning managers, and BU coordinators. And overall, Alok is coordinating this particular initiative from Africa BU. Sure. So this is a very rich composition, and they would be they will be liking to hear from you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Deepak, and thank you, Mr. Rahul Sika, for a very nice introduction. And again, re-emphasizing the point of the reason behind this process excellence initiatives. And as the session unfolds, we will do some contrast and comparison of different implementations that we see around us, and especially with relevance to what has happened at L&T with the different business units. And so it will be a learning, not just a theoretical download today, but it will be more in terms of what are these concepts and how these concepts are applied for real-time problem solving. And of course, as Deepak has always insisted, we are going to apply these concepts in the days to come. In the next few sessions, over the next few sessions, we will see how we could use these concepts to actual process improvement. So with that, I will get into the session. So I'm taking the video off now, and I will be sharing my presentation. Just give me a second. So before we get into the details of the modules, I just would like to welcome you all once again, and I hope that I am audible and you are able to see the presentation that is projected here. If not, please let me know. And as far as the session goes, I definitely would like it to be more interactive. So this is not going to be a monologue. There will be questions asked. I will ask you questions in case you don't ask. So that there will be points where we will stop and rehearse the important points, and then the application in case of any tools discussed and so on. And just before we get into the main module, I would like to re-emphasize this point that this is a very, very basic introduction to process excellence. And I know that many of you might have got very good exposure into some of these concepts. And so taking the larger audience into mind, and also to the fact that whenever we need to do process improvement, there are certain basic steps that we need to follow, and we will emphasize on those basic steps. And as we go through the module, it will become very obvious to you what we are trying to emphasize here. And so in this module on the process excellence, what we plan to cover is a plan, do, check, act cycle. So it's a very, very fundamental, basic cycle to the world of process excellence, which is nothing but the process improvement as a concept. So looking at the agenda, what we have set for ourselves is today. That is day one. We will be focusing on the basics. What is the context for process excellence? Why is it used in the industry? Then what is this PDCA cycle, the so-called PDCA cycle, which is very, very foundational to all process excellence techniques, which is seen around the world, whatever it may be. And organizations have been practicing various process excellence approaches, but with all that, there's a certain foundation which is based on the PDCA cycle. And of course, we will draw some examples from the industry today as we see some of the leading companies in the world of what they have adopted. And sorry, somebody else? Hello?
I think the sharing has gone, Dr. Sriram.
Yes. So I hope you're able to see it now. Yes, so here there's some leading examples from the world as to what those implementations are with the rest of the world, and what are those leading companies. And then, of course, there are some followers from the construction industries as well. where it is maybe it is the last one to pick up according to many of those journals that talk about the implementation of these approaches in the industry world. And then we will refer to some of the key initiatives in process excellence. Of course, during some of these logical breaks will be there, and then during that, some videos I will try to project on different. This is examples from different industries, the leaders themselves talking about the importance of processes and so on. And then we will get into the combination of what we mean by process excellence here in the L&T context. And with that, with the addition of some important tools that we use in the case of process improvement, some of the projects that we have taken so far, and some examples therein. And then we will discuss about some aspects of day 2 early on, so that our day 2 and day 3 in this case, we are split the day 2 into 2 sessions. So that we will discuss in terms of what we are planning to do during the second and third workshop. And then the last but not the least is a summary of all this. And of course, the session will be throughout any time, any point in time. If whenever you have, you have a point to make or you'd like to discuss, please raise your hand or please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. So we want this session to be very interactive, unlike just a download of all these different concepts and so on. So I think that will be. Then of course I will stop by in between to ask you questions. So with that, let us start the session. So the context of process excellence, when we talk about process excellence, we always talk about clarity. We talk about the processes being a process-centric approach that is generally seen. And so what you're seeing in the images here is a boiling pan, which is with water that is boiling, and then on the other side is somebody seeing the reflection in a small lake. So here it is the whole point where this concept originates is where the organization, whenever there is a state of chaos, so whenever there is a state of chaos, it is impossible to see the reflection. Whereas when there is a steady state where we talk about clearly defined states, that includes that is well defined by your process, that is exactly where you will be able to implement these techniques or use these techniques in a very efficient way. At least that is what we want to get to, the state, the two different states. And now it is easier said than done. So many organizations in the past, when this entire, I think the journey started somewhere in the mid-90s or early 90s in Motorola. And then when I started my career with General Electric, that is where I learned about these techniques. That is very long ago, 20 years plus. So that time, it was the combination of not just the processes, it is a combination of the 4 elements, which is always talked about. That is, one is the people dimension, and then is a technology, then process, and then culture. So these actually form the 4 different blocks or the ingredients that create the basic platform for process excellence. So without this 4 elements, it is impossible to create a culture or create a process or create a system by which the improvements will sustain. So as we go forward, we will try and understand more in terms of what each one of these elements, how they play a role in terms of in terms of the setting the culture for process excellence. As a people dimension, for example, it's all about skills that we bring in for various problem solving situations, and then technology is all about the systems that we have in place. Processes is simply the process, a well-defined way in which we are executing our processes or the way in which we execute the work. And the standard operating procedures, as referred by Mr. Rahul Sikka during his conversation, I mean, that actually emphasizes the need for standard operating procedures, starts with the basic definition of processes in an organization. So with that, the last but not the least is the culture. Culture is where we bring in the elements of change management. Many organizations have done that along with the process excellence culture. This is nothing but how do we make sure that people follow this approach? And this is not about attending this training. Very honestly, if it is, this is not a one-time session where we just attend and then we go on and then we forget about it, whatever we learn, and then when the actual work comes, this is not applied in its real sense. So that is about the cultural part, where we will need to have some measures in place, some process controls in place. We'll talk about updating the stakeholders on a regular basis. And to emphasize that, when we did the first workshop with PT&D with Deepak, one thing which we did was when we entered the project, it was with a clear sort of identification of somebody who would own this entire. Yeah, somebody wanted to ask a question. Okay. So basically, those are the four building blocks of process excellence, if you will, and these combine in any organization. This is a combination of the people, technology, process, culture, which leads to the sustainable process improvements and business solutions, which we have seen across the domain, regardless of whether it is a manufacturing industry or construction industry. The standards remains the same. So here again, in a different map, all this put together. So we talk about something in the process excellence language. We'll talk about states, which is nothing but the current state. Typically, the current state is where we experience pain. That is typically defined by lacking processes. We will see excessive waste that is being generated. We will learn what those wastes are, and longer cycle times. So that is a typical problem with many organizations, is that some work that should be executed in about a month will take 3 months or 4 months or even more. And we will superficially, when you look at it, we may think about various reasons we could conclude, but then when we look at it in a measurable way, when we look at data and facts, when we look at it from a process-oriented way, it leads to more sort of options for us to leverage and understand about how and why our present state is weak. And in order for us to improve, we look at these four elements. These are the four levers that we have in order to improve the current state. And we want to go to the future state, which is a more process-oriented, where we see an improved cycle time, optimal cost, and least waste generated. So this all, the entire cycle is called as a continuous improvement activity, which is not a one-time story. It keeps on this improvement cycle till the process stabilizes or changes into something totally different. So this is the essence of process excellence. We look at two states. One is the current state, which is lacking and or suffering from many inefficiencies, not just the one that is listed here. And you want to go to a future state that is very well defined. People follow the process-oriented approach. So it is not people-dependent, it is process-dependent. And people, of course, utilize or use their skills with the help of technology and process to achieve the best out of it. So that is, with that definition and that fundamental, let us go to the next one. And typically, all the process improvement projects revolves around the safety, cost, quality, and then schedule. So especially in the construction scenario, these four metric you would already be knowing, in many of those projects. But that is, again, it is across the industry at a macro level. These are the drivers in terms of cost reduction, safety, improving the safety, achieving tighter timelines, the delivery, and then the quality always is of prime importance whenever there is a process of improvement or a product development. So in this, what if we don't follow the process orientation? So many of the organizations, so most of the successful organizations that we will see, some of the famous names have had some hybrid mix of whatever we spoke about or whatever we will be discussing with specific in terms of the process excellence approaches. What if we don't have any of these at all? It's a question of it's like a time bomb where we will see that the customer complaints may not be attended to, or if we don't have a proper system or a proper process by which we can process those complaints and implement it. And the costs which we'll have to keep a tab on will lead to an increase, and without our knowledge and without proper mechanisms to control it, that's not going to be easily controllable. And of course, the bottlenecks which we have or we see generally at different instances in the processes, they come without any forewarnings, causing serious safety issues at times or serious process failure. And whenever that happens, it's very difficult to get back into action without a proper control mechanism. And that is where the process control, as we will see later, becomes of paramount importance, because we need to control effectively whatever process that we develop. So that is very important. And of course, as time progresses, if we don't have a process-centric approach, it's a question of time before the competition edges over, and then eventually the market is lost. So because it's very difficult to sustain chaos, and that can lead to more chaos, and finally it leads to the instabilities that we see in general in organizations, right? So with that sets the kind of the kind of understanding that you have on the why the organizations lack process orientation, typically fail in time. And so on the positive side of it, if the organizations that implemented process excellence over time and sustained their results, sustained their growth. So it is not a one-time activity where we improve a process or develop a new product or beat the competition by launching a series of products. It's about sustained improvement. It's about sustained innovation. It's about sustained, the process way of implementing the businesses. So that comes, when we realize the overall customer satisfaction is good, where people have or the organizations have seen the customer satisfaction increase. So there are tools by which we measure the customer satisfaction. So whenever we talk about process excellence, what gets measured gets done, and that is the phrase there, and that has been validated in a number of organizations, that if we don't measure, if we don't have any measurements, if we don't have a proper system of measurements in place, it simply will not work. And so whatever is listed here in bullet points is just some examples that organizations have realized where they have benefited out of this implementation. So there is improved process flow, there reduction of defects, and we will get into that definition, what is a defect and what it means to reducing a defect. And there are this list is endless. Many organizations have implemented it for new product introduction, new process introduction, new technology initiatives, and so on and so forth. So I will. There are some videos, related videos, but I will play it at appropriate breaks. So we will get there soon. So what is the process excellence? I just want to emphasize this point again. Some of you or many of you would have heard these terms: the Six Sigma, the Lean, the APQP, the business process reengineering, the change management. These are some of those pillars, and this is one pillar. And the other one talks about TQM, CMMI, ISO, statistical process control, and so on. And then there is a third one, which is nothing but a hybrid combination. This is not a standard definition, but it goes by the name process excellence. It goes by the name business excellence or operational excellence, Lean Six Sigma. Then people have their own. When you talk about the companies like Tata Business Groups, they have TBEM, Tata Business Excellence Model. So all this is nothing but a combination of or a mixed bag of these techniques as per the requirements that is there in the organization. So there is not like a one size would fit all type of an approach where if we adopt a Six Sigma off the shelf, Lean off the shelf, or a change management off the shelf, it will work here. We have to do it with respect to different ICs, the way in which it is organized, the way in which the projects are, the way in which the customer base works. So all this is different. And my interaction, my short time with L&T says that we need to be even more precise in terms of how do we want to mix these techniques. So we will, and then now here, one thing again, the PDCA, the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, it's a very simple 4-stage approach, which we'll learn pretty soon. In terms of what these 4 stages are, is a very generic definition, but that serves as the fundamental or the foundation for all these techniques, regardless of where they originate from or when they came into existence. So that is the PDCA model, and this is adopted across the industries in a variety of combinations, as I mentioned, and the aim is to improve the processes, improve systematically. And main advantage here is that we talk about, whenever we talk about process excellence, we talk about sustainability of the process. It's not just a creation of a process, but we talk about periodic sustenance, or something that should stay for a very long time to come. So I'm going to take a short break here for a video. This video is from the ex-G chairman, late Jack Welch. Please have a look at it in terms of what he had to convey. And I hope that if the audio is not clear or there is a lag, please let me know.
I see a 6. I see a Six Sigma company as a company whose management understands that variation is evil, that serving customers with what they customers find, because you will be, in fact, driving that customer's productivity. You'll have it in your bones to get outside your internal focus to your external focus. And everything you do internally will be thought of as how is it going to impact a customer. You talk about becoming customer-centered. In every annual report, we're a customer-focused company. Well, Six Sigma really drives you in a methodology to be one. Because all you're doing is driving out variation, driving better new products that are right the first time they get them. They're not experiments. So a Six Sigma company has a leadership from the top down that understands that and doesn't allow or tolerate people that don't get it from a fundamental way, not from a customers are good way, from a fundamental understanding. It's in the leadership bones. That's what a Six Sigma company is. And where the understanding is deep in the organization and broad in the organization.
Okay. So that is the Jack Welch famous introduction in terms of what Six Sigma is and what a Six Sigma company is all about. And that's, the sum and substance of what he just explained is all about carrying out the improvements in a process-centric way and being able to understand that variation is evil. And that is something which needs to get in. The fundamental thinking that it's okay if it changes, 10% plus or minus, it's okay. That sort of an approach is not what we are talking about here. we are talking about something that is we are able to reproduce the results. We are able to identify that if there is a change, if there is a variation, we should know the root cause. Why is it being caused? What is driving it? And we try to arrest the variation in such a way that the end product, whether it is a process that we are trying to improve or launch a new product, it becomes defect free, and it is the change or the improvement is sustainable. So with that, any questions till this stage? I would like to stop for a couple of minutes and understand. So what is your view on this, whatever message that Jack Welch gave, how do you relate that to the business here at L&T? It's open. Now, till somebody, answers this, we are not going forward. Yeah, last time we just completed this workshop with Heavy Civil, and there initially the participants were very silent. And one of the aspects with the online session is that we don't know if the participant is there or not. But to check that, I would definitely at some point in time call out names. I hope you don't mind. It's only the intention is to make it more interactive. So with all the summary that you learned till now, what you see that and how does it impact our state at L&T here in terms of what the projects that we try to do? Anybody? So some of the names that I see here: Mohan Raj, Venkatraman.
Very good morning.
Yes, good morning.
This process excellence, the four key point is very, very important. One is people, technology, culture, and process.
Yes.
And we touch upon people is related with the skill.
Yes.
The technology is related with IT, PIM, as well as CAD.
Yes.
And culture, follow-up approach at the ownership, mainly into the ownership.
Mm-hmm.
The process is connected with the SCM as well as design. And for the successful completion of the project, the four elements is very, very key. One is safety, cost, quality, as well as schedule for all the projects.
Okay.
This could able to sense to my whatever I could able to get. As far as the video, I'm not able to completely hear because of the voice disruption.
Okay. Okay, that maybe is that the case with everyone, or I will definitely share this, share the link once this is over, if in case there is because of network issues. Anybody else who are able to watch this video, what it conveyed? That was Jack Welch, ex-CEO.
Yeah. See, I think he was trying to tell, somebody was asking him whether this Six Sigma will improve the valuation of the company. He was trying to say it may not, but it will improve the connectivity with the customer. That is what I think.
Yes.
Also,
yes.
voice was a little hazy. That is what he was trying to say.
Yes, Sanjay. The point here is that somebody was trying to ask that question to him, that if I were to put a slogan that Six Sigma company is something, I'm a Six Sigma company, so do you think that my valuation in the market would increase? Would Wall Street give me more points, or because I declare myself as a Six Sigma company? The simple answer to that is no, unless they produce results. That's what he said, and also the connectivity to the customer, and because we understand our customers very well, and if so, the products that or the process that we deliver, is it synchronous with what the customer requirements are or the client requirements? And that is exactly what we get into difficulties in many of the organizations in many situations. So that is something which is fundamental to the understanding. Before I start improving, before I know that I have to make some improvements, it is even more important to understand what those issues are and what is the source of those problems. And unless we get to that and I see what is the cause for the variation, as you rightly mentioned in the video, it is impossible for us to control.
Right.
Thanks for that. So anybody else? The last point, one more point, and then we will move on to the topic.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, myself Dipankar Mukherjee. Myself Dipankar Mukherjee. I am representing ADSC Africa Bureau. I am working as a PM. Okay. Hello.
Yeah. Please.
So my question is, in our EPC environment, how this process, we make this process more stronger, because since we are doing here integrating the things and we are giving a solution to the customers. Okay.
Yes.
So we are basically integrator. So we are from our engineering skill, we understand the client requirement, and based on the different companies' product, we make together and give one complete solution to them. So here the quality of my solution not only depend on me, also depend upon the vendor where I fetch those materials.
Yes.
And today's scenario, market is very competitive, and in this competitive world, if you want to bring those things from outside my organization, which is not in my control, and their quality also impact my quality as well as my process. Because if I give one short example, say if I purchase one material from X vendor, and this X vendor doesn't have proper quality, and but their cost is very good, but in the same time, if you want to be a competitive, if you want to take those material, then you also put some additional effort to make their quality up at par our level. Then only you can take those material and you can proceed. So here the process, whatever you said you are discussing, is very important, and how we should nurturing on this particular thing to understand how my solution will be cost effective and as well as very qualitative. This is my understanding up to now.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Divankar. So with that, let us move on to the main session. I think thanks for sharing your views. So let us understand more fundamentally in terms of what how the excellence is implemented in the organization, what is the structure around it, so that you get to know the intensity in which some of the organizations function. And this is not just a banner up there saying that, okay, we are doing some of these activities. That is definitely not the intention here. And it is not the intention elsewhere as well. So let us look at it and understand it. And then you keep that in mind, as time goes, as we move on further in terms of stabilizing these approaches, we will evolve gradually into that as time goes. So here is the generic global model. These are roles that are created. What you see is a role. We definitely don't want to get into each and every one of them, what is listed here, and debate, how that is going to help us shape this organization at the moment. But what I want you to understand from this, or take away from this slide, is only this much, that this is a very structured sort of a process. Even establishing this as a function, implementing certain roles within the function. So if you were to imagine, the PT&D function would ideally have each one of these ellipse roles that is defined here as, let us say, a team member, a yellow belt, black belt, all these different definitions that you see here with a clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And as I said, accountability again stands out in all of these. Because that is what these roles are measured on, how effective that accountability is, and what are the metrics for a division champion or deployment champion, what are the metrics for a black belt, green belt, and so on, and process owner. Some of these roles, be created here in terms of the project champion, whoever is championing the project for PT&D, in the charters that have been prepared, and Alok has been instrumental in getting those charters done. And when we get into the day 2 workshop, we'll get to know what those roles are a little bit more detail. But even as we discuss that in our context, you must understand that the external organization that have already implemented these techniques have these formally defined roles in their organization, and it's a full-time sort of an opportunity for them to kind of look at how best they can improve the processes, how best the improvement opportunities can be identified, equally important. It's not like some project that we will work on, that approach is not there, are these project aligned and so on and so forth. So we will look at, as we go forward, we will see how this role manifests in different ways. So this is just a snapshot of different roles. And some of those highlighted ones is what we will also be looking at when during our project execution in the day 2 and 3. Okay. So here, the roles of a champion, we are just sort of identified a few items here. So developing some project charters and project ideas, which is nothing but some ideas for improvements. The charter is just a formal representation of that idea in a structured form. So what a charter is, we will explain. We'll see that in a minute, and then we will have the ideas formalized in the charters in terms of opportunities. If I improve, what is the benefit for the organization? It is not the improvement for the sake of improving something, doing some work, but it is about how best we can effectively implement these process changes in such that we get a very good reduction in the cycle time, or we reduce substantially, we are able to reduce the costs. And by looking at all different opportunities, it's not going to, intuition is not something which will work everywhere. And as the processes and businesses get more and more complex, we will have to rely on measurements, data and facts, and there is no other choice. It is not because businesses are not businesses, technology, the external dependencies are not growing in a linear fashion for us to kind of imagine that like today is 10, tomorrow is going to be 11, and the next day it's going to be 12. That's the type of growth that we are seeing. It is very, very sort of non-linear. And from that perspective, we need to capture those ideas, whatever maybe the improvement, we need to put them together in the charter. So the roles of the champion for process excellence is very critical here in terms of identifying the improvement ideas, putting that in a charter form. We'll see soon what a charter looks like, and also some dedicated time for process excellence, because this involves a lot of activities, classroom sessions, workshops, and so on. And selecting the process excellence candidates, so it's basically the team, and also somebody who will own the process. So we will see shortly, what are the roles of a process owner. And in the previous PT&D sessions that we had with Deepak, we did select a process owner during the workshop, and that process, or the role of the process owner was to make sure that whatever improvement that we got is sustainable. It's still followed, from project to project. It's not a one-time activity. So for the sake of this training and so on. So that is it. And then we mentor and support team. Of course, there is going to be a lot of hurdles that the team faces, especially when it involves multiple vendors, when you are interacting with governmental approvals and agencies and so on. You're going to have lots of hurdles, either within the organization or outside, for which we need a mentor, somebody who will support the team in active role in mentoring the team. And then, of course, closing and transitioning projects. So these are all formal steps that generally is seen in the context of process improvements across the industry. So that is very important for us as well. So it is a periodic review with the process owner and sustainable results that we are looking at. And then finally, transition of process ownership, what it means in the present context. We will explore that as well. So here we are slowly getting into the concept. I'm slowly leading you towards the PDCA. So I'll keep reminding you about this PDCA technique. What the plan, do, check, act cycle, the 4-stage cycle talks about. Why is it used? Why is it so simple? So in terms of its representation, yet so powerful across the industry. I mean, if you pick any Japanese industry at random, you will see that the PDCA technique is implemented in a very detailed way. Maybe they are more into the lean concept or lean problem solving techniques, but nevertheless, that is powerful and that's been used in the Japanese industry for ages. Or 18 months. So between this time is the process. Yeah. Was that a question?
Sir, please go ahead. I'm muted.
Okay. So the process ownership is important in order for us to sustain the gains achieved during this improvement and creation of this process. And we will see in terms of how this role helps us maintain that level. So I'm emphasizing on some of the roles because at this stage, when we are going to work on real projects, it's very important at this stage for some of these roles to be defined clearly so that it is clear. It is, first of all, it is understood, and second, we follow it such that the improvements are sustained. And there are, of course, levels, different levels in process excellence. As I said to you before, that these come with predefined roles and responsibilities at each stage. So therefore, for a specific reason, there are some levels defined, and each level indicates a level of maturity, if you want to call it that way, or more responsibilities as we go from left to right. So we are in the first stage where the PDCA, this is a very basic introduction to the process excellence, but at the same time, we are also going to learn some basic tools that will help us address the issues that we have at hand right now. And as we dig deeper into the issues, say, for example, if you want to look at the design of a component, if you want to look at some of those very specific aspects, then we will need to look at more advanced skill in this gradient between yellow to master black belt. So we typically have yellow, green belt, black belt, and master black belt, and then the champion. So all these are different roles, and then we are at the first stage here, trying to see how, in terms of the PDCA, but all this map back to PDCA, and that is where the origin of all these techniques or even these levels are. So these are simply the larger responsibilities as it advances across time. Right. So that is the distinction of these levels. And so in the case of PDCA, the first and foremost is it's the model for continuous improvement, as we saw earlier. And it all stems back to this man here in the picture, who is Edwards Deming. And Deming is a person who is adored, admired, and very well appreciated even today in Japan. A Japanese industry, he literally turned around the Japanese auto industry in particular on the process industry, in process-centric approaches, and trying to fine-tune the variations and so on, the defects, reducing the number of defects. So the Deming's PDCA cycle talks about a plan, do, check, act as 4 stages. These are 4 repetitive steps. Again, it's a cycle. So as we go through the plan, then as we go through the do, check, act, there are 4 distinct stages. And there are some steps that we follow within each. We will see what those steps are. And when we reach the end step, which is act, again the cycle starts with plan, which means that we are in the continuous improvement cycle. So, and so that is one example, which is nothing but a defect is something which is anything outside the customer spec. So defect is something which is a result of a process. a defect usually happens as a result of a process, and that defect is what we are trying to control, and that is nothing but because of variation. The process variation leads to the defect, and that is exactly what we are trying to control by means of this plan, do, check, act cycle. So I'm just taking a break here. There is an interesting video by Deming. Please have a look at it. For those who are unable to hear the video or we should see it, please let me know. I can share it offline. But do take some time off to see this. It's a very interesting one. Okay.
It was Oliver Beckwith, a friend of mine, who remarked in 1947 in a meeting of the American Society for Testing Materials that a dissatisfied customer does not complain. That was his experience. The customer does not complain. He just switches, and you don't know about it. Or as my friend Robert Peach, when he was with Sears Roebuck and Company, remarked to me, he said he had a better way to put it. The goods come back, but the customer does not.
So that is Deming himself in terms of the importance of looking at the client requirements, importance of capturing the customer requirements, and once again emphasizing that requirements, for any process improvement, there has to be a voice of the business or voice of customer or voice of process which needs to be in place. What it simply means is that you don't straight away start assuming that, okay, this is the problem and I'm going to fix this problem. In the past, my experience based on my 10 years of study, this is what has happened always, and hence in the future also it should happen. And that is exactly what we are trying to change here in terms of a fundamental shift. So whenever there is an issue, we just try to do a requirements study and see that whether that is something which we are experiencing right now, or is it something else which is causing it. So that requirements analysis, if we don't do, then we end up delivering the wrong service to the customer, or the service that we offer will not be of satisfaction to the clients. That is exactly what this is all about. So with that message, we look at some of the construction specific data here. So this is from a journal article that was published, I think, in the American Society of Civil Engineers some time back, or in a conference. So here, what we are talking about is on the left, it just tells you the disruption and nonlinear growth, and we already discussed that it's not a linear map anymore. Many technologies are in the nonlinear path right now, and if we have to approach them and be an organization that can compete in the future, we will have to implement our techniques. The way in which we work should be a process-centric way. And in the construction industry in particular, if you see, there's a middle dip here, which means that still opportunity for 50% of the organizations to catch up with the process-centric approaches in a global sense. So that is a fairly well-known fact that the construction industry is yet to catch up with it, but it's a question of time before overwhelming percentage of them will follow the process centricity or process centric approach as time goes. So with that, we go to this football field here for a minute, and that is important from a point of from a perspective of being able to understand and appreciate the fact of what is a defect in the first place. So how do I say, in my context, in a PT&D's context, in your project context that you're trying to implement, for the participants who are in day 2 and day 3 this time, you'll be wondering, what should I define as a defect? So defect is something that is simply out of the specifications. So whatever be it your internal customer or external customer, and you see a table here that is a famous table that anybody, I think most of you or many of you would have heard. So basically, it's a goalpost here, and what we see is that those can be assumed as your customer specification limits, and we are trying to hit a bunch of goals and all falling at the right place, so that they are within the spec limits and you score a goal. And there are this couple of points which you will see that always it's hit outside, and those are those can be termed as your defects as far as your processes are concerned. The same analogy works for the processes and the products as well, equally effective. And the performance table here that is shown, it just tells you that given 1 million opportunities, if you can at most make 3.4 in a Six Sigma sense. So somebody saying that I'm a Six Sigma company, they can at most make 3.4 defects in a million cases. So a pen manufacturing company, if you say that it's a Six Sigma company, it means that the items that they produce will have only at most 3.4 defects in million products. So that's what the message is. So with that definition, I would like to stop for a question here. So, in terms of defects, that is the definition that you will come up with. That is okay. But what if we go beyond Six Sigma? You have heard that at best you would have heard Six Sigma, but have you heard of any companies that are beyond Six Sigma? And what is the difficulty in going beyond? If somebody says that I'm a 12 Sigma company, you can't dispute that, but then what is wrong or right with it? Can anybody answer that? Okay, again, it's an open forum, so I'm just opening it up. So we have Rajan Bansal, then we have Karanjot, Jeevanand, so Arun Kumar. Anybody?
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. I'm Rajan Bansal.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning. So who wants to go first?
Good morning, sir. I'm Rajan Bansal.
You wanted to answer.
Okay, you proceed, then I will continue. You proceed.
Okay, right. See, my view is like beyond Six Sigma, I do not know whether it is practical. Say, for example, 12 Sigma, 10 Sigma. That means it will not be in a million opportunities. It may be some, say, 100 million or 1 billion opportunity. There will be a very little defects.
Yes.
It may not be practically possible. That is my view. The maximum possible in practice will in a million 3.
Right.
Even any process industry, if you take, say, car manufacturing company, in the lifetime of the company, they would not have manufactured that much possibly. Or maybe we have to wait for the period to evaluate whether it's really a 10 Sigma. The period will be very long. That's my view.
Okay. Thanks, Arun. Anybody else with any other comment?
Yeah, I accept with what Arun is telling. And if you look at our contracts, we have to be within customer specification limits, and whatever is there as per the contract, we have to deliver. And I believe that the concept of Six Sigma, which has been picked up from automobile industry, and in Japan, the companies like Toyota, they have followed it extensively. Even looks like that they also have not gone beyond Six Sigma. And as you have put in the chart, that Six Sigma is that, the defects, DPMO, it's like 3.4 per million opportunity, and which give a yield of 99.9997%. So beyond that, of course, as you've told that we can go, but it's impractical. And again, if the cost of going beyond a Six Sigma up to 12 Sigma, is it practical or not? Like whether it is yielding the enough results vis-a-vis cost which we'll put in, we have to look into.
Absolutely.
Similarly, if we will look at the construction industry, Like, Larsen and Toubro, as you know, we are working across globe. We are working in Middle East. We are working in Asian countries. We are working in Africa, and we are working in India. So if you look at in terms of economies, the economies in these countries are in various stages. There are certain countries which are very developed. Like, we are working in Bangkok, Thailand. We are working in Malaysia, and also we are working in countries like UAE, sort of developed countries. Right. Apart from that, we are working in countries like India, which are somewhere in between. And then we are working in countries in continent like Africa, which are underdeveloped countries. So all the countries, they have got their own budget in terms of execution of jobs. Okay, and accordingly they have got their specifications. Like, there are certain countries which are looking for a substation, for example, the GIA substation, and with state of the art technology. Okay, and there are certain countries in Africa which are still looking for AIA substation because space is not a constraint for them, number one, and number two, they have got a constraint on budget. So what we as Larsen and Toubro has to make sure that we are always within the customer specification limits, number one, and number two, if we can add a little bit to delight the customer, that can be our Six Sigma.
Okay. I think
I have slightly Thangapandan, actually I have slightly different view from our colleagues what they said. And reality is the Six Sigma, what all the things are. I think we can take as activities. Okay, so it can keep in a process and divide into multiple activities. So from each activities we can drive it. If you take as a Larsen and Toubro, if they do as a shuttering, let us take one of the example. It will be in multiple and millions of activities will happen across the globe within us with all the sites. And as far if the company follows the principle of Six Sigma or beyond that, and they need to bring it in such a way that all the shuttering quality of the L&T should remain same across the globe. That should be our agenda. I think we need to move in that direction. Similar way concreting, similar way like that we can put in various activities. Even if you take an electrical, you can say all substations where across the globe we are doing it. All should be in the same way, same process and same completion, and like that we can derive it and move forward. I think that is the purpose than saying different. That is my view. Maybe.
I think we all first of all, thanks all three of you to pitch in different views. That is exactly what we want. But just to answer the question, defect is something which we define in order for us to understand what is happening. How do we report the health of the process? Be it construction or be it manufacturing, it can be of any type of equipment design. When I was working with Caterpillar, I was heading the design engineering for building construction products, where there are a lot of issues both at my micro level and more at the product development overall level, which we have to define and then come up with a Sigma level for the entire equipment. And I'm just trying to connect Mr. Thangapandian, your views as versus Arun and Rajan's views as well. So from a defect standpoint, we can look at the defects happening at a micro level and then all the way how it scales to a macro level, and say that one of your products or one of the processes is functioning at, let us say, 3 sigma. I'm just going to, and that is based on my definition of defects, and that is based on my definition of the number of opportunities to make defects, and that is based on my observation of number of defects that happened with so many opportunities for making mistakes in the past. So these things, this information that will lead to some simple calculations that will at least give me a guideline. That is number one. Second point is whether a company can go beyond Six Sigma. The answer is yes. You are more than welcome, but then there has to be a very, very valid reason for doing that. I just want to have you to have that broad-based understanding. I mean, some of these companies like aircraft engine manufacturers, like GE, Pratt and Whitney, all these kind of companies, only those products are exclusive to gas turbines. The aircraft engines. Those are at somewhere around 12 sigma. There's a simple reason being that otherwise the insurance companies will not come forward in terms of sort of giving the insurance for those, or the flight worthiness, airworthiness will not be there. For those certifications will not be obtained for them. So only in those rare circumstances we'll see those cases. This is only an FYI, but what is more important for you to realize is to get it to say from 5 sigma to 6 sigma is a marathon task. But to get beyond 6 sigma, the cost goes exponentially up, and it is almost impossible. You can think of a product, which is worth, let us say, outside, we manufacture these scooters or cars, which is like cost between, let us say, scooter costs at 60,000, and the car costs something like 6 or 7 lakhs. But if you want to make it beyond the 6, or even a 6 sigma car or a 6 sigma scooter, and beyond that, it's impossible to even look at the cost benefit of these kind of implementation. So that is the reason why there is always a trade-off. What is the customer? There is always a bigger question that you have in front of you: is what is the customer willing to pay for? So that is an analysis which is the cost-benefit analysis, which typically leads to the different types of scenarios of the same product or the process, whatever be the implementation, and then what is the customer willing to pay against the quality of the product in terms of its reliability, in terms of its maintenance-free operating life. Those kind of questions becomes significant, and that leads to an answer where we will have to do a trade-off study before we reach any conclusions. So this is a kind of an outlier. I just wanted to let you know that such concepts are also there. Okay, so now with that we come back to our the discussion, the mainstream discussions. I'll switch back to the presentation. So I hope you're all able to see the presentation now.
Yes, sir.
The first, there are two questions here. So why is understanding of variation so important? What if we say that, okay, more or less I know so there will always be mistakes in my approach. I really don't care. I want to go ahead with these mistakes and pack it and give it to the customer. So that is one approach. The second approach is more difficult, time consuming, and systematic, but gives you long-lasting solutions where, we ask this question: why is understanding of variation so important?
Yeah, I would say that variation deviation in the process is the cause for the defect, or it's a potential cause for a defect. So understanding the cause is a must in order to eliminate future occurrences.
Sure. Thanks, Arun. Anybody else who would like to?
The cost and time is the two elements which is more important. Other than cost, the time is another element to produce that non-defective thing. What is the time which is equal to a cost once again, which will come in to build. So this may be another aspect which we need to look on.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Singar.
This is Srinivas. Any variation that is happening will eventually lead into defect. So continuously avoiding the defects, and if you have any defect, it will eventually cost you, or it will lead into the timeline delay. So to look into both the aspects and not to repeat again and again happening in the future jobs, when if you are doing, let's say, a shuttering as the example which was taken by Tangapandian. So it can, you can eliminate those repetitions happening in the future jobs. So that can lead into somewhere, maybe if you are at sigma 2, you can go towards sigma 3. Maybe you can proceed into improving yourself. That may be one.
Absolutely. Thanks, Srinivas. That is on the dot.
Sometimes this variation is due to the requirement of client or the requirement of the project.
Yes.
So that also cause for the variation.
Okay. So the conflict between the requirements, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good. Very good. Any other points from anybody? Any non-participants were there, but participants, but they are not been participating in the discussion.
Hello, this is Hamza from engineering.
Hi,
Maybe hi, hello everybody. Also, there is this time implication is always there. Being manufacturing a perfect product may take unpractically long time, and in our projects also we have the time limitation.
Yes.
And maybe posting the goal, which all the ball inside the goal may come up with some incredible time for a team, because all the match is limited to 90 minutes. So that may be the reason also for not going beyond Six Sigma.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Okay, so with that, I think we'll switch back in the interest of time back to the session. Of course, there will be more questions on the way. Sorry. So let us look at what other companies have done in this context and how others are doing. So we will know what is the breadth of the implementation when we look at what the construction industry is all about. So here is the snapshot of different implementations that have, and of course, they are still being implemented in a rigorous way. GEs, of course, have been using this since '99, or maybe mid '90s. I would say '95 they started off, but they started realizing their value proposition, and the savings have been $6 billion due to the use of Six Sigma and Lean. But extremely process-centric and very, very tight process controls in all different aspects. They are into oil and gas. They are into heavy machineries like off-highway trucks that you generally see in mining, manufacturing of mining equipments and so on. So that is there. And on the Toyota, on the other hand, is where we have seen the very rigorous practice of 5S. And 5S is not just a clean your desk type of an approach. It's a very different philosophy. It's a very nice topic worthy of a separate session. And people launch projects and initiatives and develop strategies based on 5S. The 5S could even apply into the way in which you're managing your desktops in terms of the way in which the files are organized, how accessible they are, and so forth. So they have benefited by the use of this. Amazon is a very process-driven company, and as you all know that they are into process improvement, process optimization. Inventory management is very critical for them. They have been using this for quite a long time. Honeywell, then the other names are Caterpillar and Wipro. Wipro, I wanted to take a local company which is very specific to the India region, and of course they are also global. So these global examples, just to give you a sample of where all these implementations have taken effect. And Caterpillar is also a wide organization in terms of their presence in heavy machinery, especially, and they are also into building construction products, a range of building construction product in the North Carolina. In addition to these, of course, you have these construction industries. So 80% of the Fortune 100 companies use Six Sigma or Lean, and that is a large percentage. They have all been successful in terms of being able to control that variation and reduce the defects that they produce. So in Amazon, the defect would be if you order an item, you get something else instead of that, or if some other brand is shipped to you, and that is considered a defect. A defect could be if you are promised that you will receive in 24 hours, takes 72 hours for the product to reach you. Those are all different defects in different contexts. You will have to derive your own definitions of it, what it means, for you to call a defect. Now, one takeaway for you all would be to make sure that you have very tight process controls and process accountability. That is exactly what I learned in GM and started my career there. And I can tell you that in all the projects, regardless of which business units that you work with, this has all been process driven. We have used a bunch of ERP systems which are homegrown, but then very, very tight process controls, very, very tight process accountability. And as I mentioned earlier, you will have all those belt roles with a very, very clearly defined roles and responsibilities for the individuals. And this is in addition to what their present roles are. And there is no other way of doing work. The only way that you do projects is through process excellence. So there is nothing like, I have my main work and then this is used as a, on top of it, I have to do this work. And that is the cultural aspect that we need to get rid of first. So this is nothing like, there is another project that I need to work on. So this is a way in which the work is done. And that is by using the tools, and that is by keeping in mind that we are doing it in a process-centric way. And if the process is not there today, we need to derive a process, establish a process, tightly control it, tightly monitor it. And if there is any variation that we see, we will see how best we can address those variations and bring it in control. And that comes with, again, the process ownership. Again, and I'm repeating that because that is something which is very, very key for sustainable results through this journey. So with that, let us look at the construction scenario. And here, some names I'm sure all of this you have known. Vinci and Bechtel are known for using different implementations. Say again, all this implementation that you see across the industry, these are not the same in terms of the combination of tools or the concepts that and the way in which they have implemented it. The Tatas, for example, have their own Tata Business Excellence model. I have worked with Tatas also, and so that is a combination of lean that combines some elements of Six Sigma, the total quality management, waste management, process management, and so on. And so this again is not to delve deeper into what each organization is doing. It's just to let you know that the construction industry is also in the famous ones are catching up with this techniques and have benefited from implementing this in a big way. And so that is the takeaway here. And as time goes, we will see some of those benefits happen here at L&T as well. That is the whole point. So we still have 50% of the construction industry which remains to, which is in the process of adopting, which is not yet quite adopted the process-oriented culture. And I can see some of the projects which we discussed with Heavy Civil also, and the PT&T, that the variety, the diversity in terms of the interactions, the diversity in terms of the projects will make it more challenging. But then the benefits are equally, we'll have to weigh out those benefits and understand where exactly we would need to apply these techniques and tools in order to get the maximum mileage out of this. So we'll explore that. And this is just 1 minute for you to read, and then we move on because it's a very wordy slide. I didn't like it to be quite honest to be present in the training, but then the whole point is, we want to just highlight that in the construction industry, there are very, very serious implementations of the Six Sigma concepts in some of the large projects around the world. So I'll just give you a minute for you to read, and then we move on. So as we earlier saw, the role of a champion, black belts, green belts, and yellow belts have all been defined, and this is pretty much the standard across industries. So this used to be the standard and still the standard in GE. This is still the standard in Caterpillar. This is still the standard in Amazon. This is still the standard in Bechtel and many other organizations as well. So this is not a small project. This is a very fairly large project, and for which they use the concept of Six Sigma to identify, the schedule or to make sure that the project schedules are tightly controlled and to minimize the risk. And Six Sigma has some very powerful tools in terms of risk assessments, similar to what you might have heard as a loss causation model, which we will be touching upon. They use something called as failure modes and effects analysis, which is used to identify the high-risk games that we get into. And if we don't abate those risks, and if this happens, then it can result in accidents, it can result in casualties, all those very highly severe items. So we'll touch upon those and how best we could use some of those. So I hope you just glance through the example here. So with that, let us move forward. So at L&T, what best we could do in terms of bringing all these concepts together And as I said to you before, that we are not trying to use an approach that one size fits all, or this is the approach that will work. So this is a very flexible framework of plan, do, check, act cycle, which is a 4-stage cycle, which uses at different stages. Say, for example, in plan, we could come to understand this scenario, we could use Six Sigma and Lean to identify what is the current processes that is being in place. So that is where you will see the charter, the process, existing processes, how is my process working right now, and what sort of a defects rate I have in my process right now. Is this client focused? What is the client focus here? Have I understood my clients correctly? All this comes in the plan phase. And then we go to the do phase, where we do the process analysis. So what is going well in my process? What is not going well in my process? What are the different root causes for it? So we, in PT&D context, we carried out a very good root cause analysis with Deepak, Jerome and team. So we met at least two, three sessions with the entire team. The participation was very good. So we did the fishbone analysis to identify the root causes and then identify the quick wins. What could be the best implementations given the time frame, and what are the different ways happening and so on. So that is something which generally done or carried out during the do phase. And then comes the check phase, where we identify the solutions. So right now, we for the PT&D projects that we carried out in the past, we identified those solutions where the clear roles and responsibilities were chalked out, and then we also found that the steps that we need, or the thinner process or the leaner process, which we called it, was laid out in terms of how best we could achieve the time reduction. Those projects were aimed at cycle time reduction pertaining to the design cycle, the procurement cycle. So the revised steps were identified, and the act phase is where we actually implement it and keep monitoring it. So we need to give sufficient time for monitoring it to see whether whatever time frame. So I'm going to say that, okay, my original project always should take 18 months to finish. Now with this modified process, I think I can clock 12 months. So my savings, so then if your savings is what you have estimated, is it any match against those in terms of the actual measurements? So we will be measuring those, whether it is time or cost, we will be actually measuring and reporting those benefits here, and that is the act phase. So this is one cycle of the PDCA, and as it goes through different cycles, different instances in time, we'll see that the process stabilizes at some point, and then once it reaches a very stable equilibrium, then the next stage is to to improve it further and so on and so forth. So this is the essence of the PDCA approach, or the plan, do, check, act cycle. It's a very simple approach, and here we are not enforcing by any means, we are not enforcing that, okay, these are the tools you should follow, these are the steps that you should follow. It all depends on the problem at hand. That is exactly what we are doing in plan phase. We look at the charter, we look at the issues, we look at the different processes that you have, and we identify the pain points in this process. We go as deep as we can in the process map. So when we carried out the PT&D process flow for substations, and that is exactly the workshop that I'm talking about, we carried out a similar activity where we brainstormed, and the team came up with different issues related to the process and how best the defects or the process variations could be controlled. So with that summary, this is just a model that helps us visualize, in terms of what the PDCA cycle is all about and what are those important stages. And as we go forward, there is a quick reference that I've created for us to use during the day 2 and 3, so that when we have the real scenario at hand, we will be able to quickly get into it and use them readily. So here, so project selection and alignment in any of in all the process excellence projects that we discussed, either as a concept or as an application, in all the companies or organizations that we discussed so far, we see that the project selection and alignment is of paramount importance. What does it mean? Is that the effort that we put in terms of process excellence has to sort of add up to some overall goal for L&T as an organization. So that is exactly what this is all about. That is how it gets measured in other organizations. So that is exactly what we are also looking for here. It has to start with some foundational processes, some organizational processes. So foundational resources is all about your people, your IT, the analytics, process excellence, infrastructure. All this will come as foundational resources. And then on top of it, there are some organizational processes on which you use them. That forms the second set, and then you will have your strategic goals, critical success factors, strategic areas for improvement, and then finally your organizational vision. All this will tie up to the organizational vision. The idea of presenting this is to only drive home one point, is that the project that you take to improve, say for example, tomorrow, I think Monday, we are discussing this Tanzania, the project. So that the selection of that project is within the organizational context, within the strategic goal for PT&D and so on and so forth. And this is not a random selection. That is exactly what we need to make sure. So such that we are able to track it, measure it in terms of the project has reached or is able to deliver its objective. And if it delivers the benefits, in what way that is going to help the organization achieve its vision. This is very important and critical. So I just thought of emphasizing this point. The other takeaways are just an explanation in terms of what each level represents and what it is seen in the general context. But so long as you understand this, you're home. So again, re-emphasizing the point that all process excellence projects, all improvement projects, I should say, should be aligned to the organizational goal and should lead to measurable benefits. So at the end of the day, when we talk about cycle time reduction, we say that the cycle time is reduced, let's say from 6 months to 3 months or 18 months to 12 months. We should be able to measure it and measure it realistically. What all led to that reduction of 6 months. And that is exactly what we did in one project in PT&D, and that you will see that as an example at how in what all the contributing factors and so on. So with that, we step into the PDCA plan phase. So again, can anybody now? I'm just going to take a 1-minute break here and ask you a question. Can anybody explain what is PDCA and what is the overall? You don't have to explain the phases here, but you just tell me what is it used for and what is the meaning behind this PDCA. And then once the discussion is over, I will carry on with the different steps at different stages. So people who didn't participate so far, please come forward. Shirish, Samir. Yes. So some of you, Karanjot, please come forward. All of you.
PDCA is plan, do, check and act.
Yes, absolutely. What else? What did you learn from that PDCA? What is it called?
Yeah, it's basically the phases. What phases we have to adopt, and the phase-wise approach to accomplish a goal.
Okay. Accomplish the goal. Okay, very well. Any other views?
Sir, good morning, Shirish here. Sir, as well explained by you, PDCA, obviously the full form is understood by all, but in reality, it is more about how we do things and how we can do it better. So let's say, for example, there is a process and it is not giving us the desired result. So we need to first of all go into the root cause, why it is not giving us the desired results. Then we need to plan it. Then we need to do it as we have planned. Then we have to check whether it has been done in the correct way. After checking, then we have to act upon it. And once it is done, the cycle is not over. It goes back into the iteration. And each iteration definitely will improve on something. So till the time it becomes a habit, as Jack Welch said, it has to get into the bones. So till that time, this iteration will continue.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Suresh. I think you have that point. Very nicely said. So it's a tool that is at your disposal to use. You can use that tool to study your process, study how well is the process doing as on today, and what are the issues, and don't jump into conclusions without looking at some measurables. So what are those measurables? The process time. It could be the process parameters. It could be some of those the transactions that is taking place. Some of those variables in the processes are measured as in continuous scale, like time and so on and so forth. And or it could be high, medium, low type of ratings that you get typically from the customers. So this is something which I want you to understand that is exactly what we mean by this by demonstrating the cycle of PDCA. Okay. Any other viewpoints before? Yeah.
Sir, good morning. Samir here. Just in continuation to what Shirish said, and so our view had during his remarks, he said it's the process like just at the start of the process itself, we need to do things right. So like the process may never go wrong if things are done right at the very beginning itself. So this is also one of the very important aspect. Like, as human beings, we commit mistakes, but in most of the processes, if it is defined in such a way that, there are minimum chances of doing a mistake, then I think it improves the overall process a lot.
Okay. Very good, Samir. Thank you. Okay, so that is good. So with that, we will, go ahead. Please.
I have one question. You
Please.
There are plenty of companies have shown their improvement after implementing Six Sigma, which has shown some the revenue enhancement, so many things.
Yes.
And particularly construction side, the Bechtel example you have shown that is you have shown macro level that company has got some benefit. Do you have any micro level? What are the exact steps or the actions they that has lead to the success of to that company?
Yeah. So very good question. Your name again? I could not see the highlight here, so I'm.
Yeah, Prabhu here.
Yeah, hi Prabhu. Thanks a lot, Prabhu, for bringing up this point. So the question here for the benefit of larger audience is the Bechtel example that we saw was showing some benefits, was showing some implementation and so on at a macro level, which is at the project level. So the micro level details are normally not disclosed to extent of parameter or what sort of installation they used, what is that design behind it. It is generally not revealed. If it is cleared by their intellectual property office, then it will be usually whether it is either published as a white paper or something like a journal article, which normally appears. Which could serve as an example, or we could use that to get more details as to how their implementations are. But unfortunately, for whatever I could gather, this is the limit in which the details are discussed and no further than this. So, unfortunately, that kind of puts us in some sort of a limitation in terms of they're accessing their actual design implementation, which we don't have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another question is this: we have been talking about that process improvement starts from planning, and before planning, I feel that identification of problematic process also is important. Is there any scientific we need to approach to identify the problematic areas, the root causes, all those things? Or from the experience, these are the failures, and we have to try to implement, looking for that improvement. I guess.
Right. Can you repeat the first part? I got the second part, but I missed you on the first part. Can you please?
First, my question is that identification of problems. Is there any scientific methodology we need to look into that, or we have to take it from the experience?
So typically in civil engineering structures, or we talk about electric the power distribution side, we talk about let us say downtime power supply, what is the downtime, or in the case of the typical construction side, we'll get some field measurements. Field measurements as in what are the defects in which by what is reported as field issues or field problems. And we collect a number of field problems in not just one. And once you have a critical number, like there's no specific number here, but as long as the sample size is representative of your field work, say for example 100 failures, 1,000 failures collected over a period of 1 year in different places. I mean there'll be that field failures will all be apples and oranges in the same box, but you need to identify the similar set of failures and box them, and then look at, okay, what is the cause for this particular set of failures? What is the cause for a different set of failures? And that is where you will have to understand the mechanism of failure. And that is exactly the place where your process will come. What process led to this failure? And what process, what are the action controls in place? If you don't have any action controls in place, if you don't have any mechanisms for prediction in place, then we need to put that together. And now, the second part of it, which you mentioned, is the intuition driven. Based on my expertise, that is a place where what we have seen in general is as the project complexity increases, you will only have experience really matters a lot, and experience counts a lot. But if experience is augmented with realistic data and facts and the process that is measurable, it will go much beyond. In terms of helping the organization succeed in identifying precise root cause or being able to address the problem in a more objective way. That is a way to look at it. I hope that is clear now. Yeah. Okay. So thanks for all those discussion. Karthik, you raised your hand, so you want to add something or?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon all. Just wanted to understand, sir, as people understand PDCA, the process improvement cycle, whatever we are discussing right now is not a one-time activity, and we wanted to do it for a sustainable growth. And I can see you have mentioned the culture as an integral part of it, as referring to our BioHead context that we executed a project in Malawi and further we could not continue there, and we have moved to other countries. So these process improvements we are doing to attain a sustainable improvement. Again, the people are the one who are going to implement this process. So now we have selected a country, Tanzania project, and the same process, same systems what we are trying to do in Tanzania may not be applicable for other country. How we are going to address those challenges, I'm just keen to understand, because I expect you may be having certain mechanism or discussion you might have had. So I'm trying to look for that, how we are going to address these cultural challenges.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for bringing up that comparison. That is precisely the reason when Alok, Jerome, myself, Deepak, we all discussed the initial part of this planning. If there was an option of conducting them, today's session is a common download. It's like a theoretical side, more in terms of the concepts. What is the, and of course that is important as well. It's not just theory for the sake of theory, but you need to understand these techniques. You need to understand how others have successfully applied it in order for us to be successful in our scenario. And that lesson is very important. That is the reason for having this session today. And today's session covers, I think, all the countries, participating countries. But I think as we go forward in some of the other sessions, we will be isolating or we will be having exclusively one exercise for Tanzania and similarly for others. And this is the very reason why we decided to have it that way, because each region will come with their own set of issues, be it the supplier side, be it the implementation side, be it the other logistics which is associated with it, which will be very specific to the country that we are dealing with. So hence we want to be able to have that in the discussion in terms of the solution. So once we complete each case, we will of course share the stories, success stories, or we share the proceedings. We will have that spread out. But what you also should make sure is that And you should not get carried away by somebody else's finding and say that, yes, I know that this is what exactly I was expecting here also. So hence, we'll do it that way. And that is not what the purpose is. The purpose is, okay, there are 5 regions, let us assume. And in 5 regions, there are 5 different problems. And how each region has approached this using the same set of tools, and what data the regions collected, what were the learnings from there, and if there is any learning that can be borrowed to other regions, that is perfectly fine. So we definitely don't want to reinvent the wheel, but at the same time, we don't want you to think that the same solution would apply to all. Okay, there's somebody else. I think it is Alok who wants to say something. Hi, Alok.
Yeah. Karthik Babu, just to be specific, we are conducting this for Tanzania, and then we will follow this again for Ethiopia. Day 4 and day 5 will be for Ethiopia, but that date is still not announced. We'll be shortly confirming that, and then we will move on to some other projects as well, North Africa and Lower East Africa as well. So based on the common learnings we will get in Tanzania as well as in Ethiopia, we will circulate this to all other countries, and then we will come out whether we have to repeat this or we can go ahead and following this process. So it will be learning, and it will be decided at later stage. But yes, Tanzania and Ethiopia, we have taken that as of now, because the projects are expecting more in Ethiopia at the moment, and Tanzania we are having few months left where we can have this implementation going on. So that is the reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Arun. So with that, let us head back to this training session. And just for your information, we and Alok, you can correct me if there is going to be a modification to this. But we plan to break from 1:45 India time to 2:45 or 2:30 for lunch here. And I don't know whether it is too early or too late for you guys, but that is a proposed or suggested time. I hope that is acceptable to you all. If not, because we are dealing with, I think, 2 or 3 time zones, so we were in discussion today, just sort of letting you know. So that is in about 20 minutes from now. Okay. Okay. So let us get on with the PDCA plan phase. So in the plan phase, what do we do? In the planning, as the name suggests, is literally, you sit with the team and understand and plan the projects and identify what are the issues that I'm facing today in terms of my implementations, and what could be the root causes for those issues to happen, and so on and so forth. So typically in the plan phase, you define the problem. And that is where the charter comes. You already use the charter to define the problem. And then map processes, different types of processes, whether it's a detailed process map that you have, very, very detailed process map in engineering companies, you will find. And at the same time, you can look at the sort of interfaces which is generally visible with the high-level process map, which will show as supplier as just one entity, customers as one block, interacting with the design teams and so on. So there the process is very sort of abstract, whereas the detailed process map is how you will exactly conduct the design as a function. Each and every transaction in the procurement is mapped, and what is the output, what is the input, everything is tracked. And that is a very complex flow, but both micro flows and macro flows, I'll put it that way, that is carried out in the plan phase, depending on what problem that you want to solve. And of course, we need to keep our the data ready for us for any analysis to tell us, if it is going to be of any use in addressing it in the first place. So that is something which will give us that signal. And of course, it will ascertain the problem's root causes also. So that is exactly what we do in the plan phase, and that is exactly what we will do on Monday when we meet as a team and for all the workshops. and we'll start with the project charter. So with that, let us look at the PT&D snapshot, what we carried out. This is actually the PT&D example. We carried out this workshop here in the L&T office in Chennai. And here the champion for this was Deepak Naik. And then we had the design and procurement teams. And of course, the entire workshop was supported by Jerome Johnson. And with Jerome's support, and of course with Deepak's coordination, we were able to get very good participation from the team. It was a well attended. I should say the 2 days, 2 or 3 sessions for us to map the process, to identify the root causes, and so on. So here the design and procurement. So the scope was only design and procurement here. And the focus areas, as I'm just giving you the snapshot, this is not the entire 2 or 3 days. It's just a portion of what we carried out and the main focus. So the focus areas is a delay in overall technical resolution, delay in start of civil activities, delay in clean room access. So these are some of the issues that the team chose to identify. As you can see, the post-its on the process map, those post-its are nothing but the issues that the team found should be resolved at those stages. So that is something which the team will need to identify here also. We will be going through these different process maps for your own for your own region. And once you come up with this process map for design or procurement, as the case may be, you will see that each one of these stages, there are a number of issues that you would like to see it resolved. And we will note down all those issues, but we will not address all of them at the same time. We will look at the prioritization. We will look at the priorities in which this needs to be solved and this should be solved. And that is exactly what this workshop was all about. So in the plan phase, typically you will see a process map. You will see a root cause analysis of fishbone. The top right photograph that shows a fishbone diagram that was carried out in order to identify the delay in overall technical resolution, and similarly for other sort of focus areas as well. So as time goes, you will see the more and more of these examples in our L&T context as much as possible, with some diversity introduced for you to be able to appreciate the work that was done at other ICs as well. So that is also there. But the core, the main point here that we are trying to drive is the plan phase is all about clearly planning, clearly aiming for a particular or a set of activities that you want to carry out, to understand in detail what focus areas or what problems I should solve and what should be the estimated benefits, either in terms of reduction in cycle time, or it could be reduction in cost or some other financial savings, cost avoidance as well. So this is the PT&D example snapshot of the workshop that we carried out here. So that was the process mapping. That was also process mapping, and then the root cause analysis. And then once this was carried out, the next was a parallel value stream map was also prepared, which is not shown here, but a value stream is essentially sort of a linearized workflow. Which is like value streams are generally carried out with the first time right type of a concept, where you need to see that the defects are not allowed to happen or minimized to an extent where it is almost becomes non-existent. And that is at least the theoretical side. But in practice, variations do happen, whether we linearize the map or we do it in a way it is supposed to happen. But the whole point here again is that we want to control the variation. We want to reduce the defects, and the one way of doing that is by process representation, and a higher abstraction or for reducing this complex map that you see in this picture is something called as a value stream map. I'll show some examples, and that time it will be clear as to what it means. Okay, with that we go into the process charter. So this is something which we have already prepared.
Raju, will you have video screen?
Yes, yes.
Just go to the previous slide.
Yeah.
There are 3 areas are identified in the particular process. Focused areas. Previous slide.
Yeah. 1 second.
price number. Okay. Any of this implementation was implemented in any of our pilot projects? When it has happened?
This happened, I think, sometime in November.
Okay.
Jerome, are you on the call?
Okay. My points are whether the identifications are implemented any of the pilot projects. What is the outcomes? If any feedback, let me know.
Sure. So this is right now the implementation has happened as per what we discussed earlier with the team, and we will definitely get back to you on that.
And I think Thresher is on the question. There is one more thing which I would like to add. See, if you will look at those focus areas. See, the first one is your overall technical resolution of the key items: GIS, transformer, reactor, CRP, SAS. See, if you will look at those technical resolutions in terms of, you're talking about the requirement of customer. So what is happening? I believe that this particular case study we have taken from our substation BU from India, because I'm able to see Kavita in the picture. So now what is happening? We have to see in terms of the Indian customer. In this case, it might be PGCIL, because we are talking about the GIS substation. So now from customer point of view, if we understand that what are going to be the requirements of customer, and keeping that in mind along with our vendors and suppliers, if we can find out those technical resolutions fast and close the points, so that it will be acceptable to customer in a faster way. This is number one. Number two, again, if we will look at the site handover requirement and then start of civil activities, again the challenges are different in different territories. See, for example, if we will talk about India, there is no challenge with respect to the skilled workman availability, whereas in Africa the challenge can be to find out a competitive subcontractor, and again the challenges are different in Middle East. So what I presume that once we will have such kind of charter, such kind of a process improvement process for a particular customer, for a particular territory, then it will be good enough to cover that particular customer in that particular territory. However, it may not be 100% relevant for other territories. So probably we have to do something similar for other territories also. See, my idea is that problems can be different in different territories. For example, today morning, RSC sir was talking about Malawi.
Yeah.
See, if you look at Malawi, there were some jobs which came by external funding, where it was putting up one transmission line and two AIS substations. L&T was fortunate enough to get the award of two AIS substations, Nikoma and Fombea, and there we have done a fantastic job. The only thing is that it could have been better in terms of timely execution, where we got delayed and we had certain problems in terms of execution. So now what we have done, we have to a very good extent, we have mapped the process. We have identified some good subcontractors who are supporting us now going forward to bid in that particular country. But what is happening? That country has got its own ecosystem and unique challenges. And if you look at the complete GDP of Malawi itself, it's like it's $8 billion per annum. $8 billion. When India is close to $3 trillion, it's only $8 billion per annum. It's a very small country which depends upon a lot of funding from external resources. Per se, once we have done the job, after that there was no visible opportunity. There was no job which has come for bidding process. And now there is one job which we are eyeing for Malawi-Mozambique interconnection. It's again a transmission line which requires some extension in Malawi and Mozambique, also one substation. So now what is happening that, as we have tried to map the process, we have understood the country ecosystem in a better way because of our experience of executing jobs in Malawi. Now we will be in a much better position to execute future jobs in that particular country, number one. And number two, we are also trying to convert some difficult opportunities into better opportunities. Like, if we can arrange some sort of funding with financial institutions and tie up with the customer, some sort of MU prospects. So that basis, we have got confidence on our EPC capability. And that's what, when Kartik Babu has raised a question that, working in Tanzania, working in Malawi. It's very important to understand the ecosystem. It's very important to put our first step correct. When we are doing a first job in the country, we might have difficulties in terms of we are into an unknown territory. We do not know exactly that country. But again, this process improvement workshop can help us to be on guard against a lot of factors which otherwise will be unknown.
Yes, absolutely.
But yes, there can be one or two lacunas like doing the first job. But as this process talks about PDCA, plan, do, check, and act. So when we will check means we have almost done our first job. We have got our learning, and then act means the next job. So next job onwards, we have to be much better. That's the complete process improvement exercise which I have understood now.
Sure. So thanks, Rajan, for the detailed explanation. I think
actually on this comment, what they are saying, basic problem what really happens is there is no proper identification of a person from engineering as well as SCM as well as and requirement of design. See, if you see in Oman, the project manager was clear, and engineering was only one guy was available, and SCM side, I've been knowing in the back end of a month. It moved very fast, and we concluded every orders within 2 weeks, not more than that. The internal process goes on, but we already started taking input documents from our vendors, saying that we'll start moving ahead with the customer's need. So there it is happening. Why not in other cases? Same thing if I see in Middle East, because earlier I was leading Middle East. Even if you see in Middle East, in other countries, it is not happening that extent, because in the tendering stage, somebody else will be involved. During the execution stage, somebody else will be involved. Everybody starts from zero. Wherein in case of women, already I reached 70 or 80. I'll start from 80 and reach 100. That is very fast. Wherein in other countries, it starts from 0 and reach to 80, then I have to reach for 100. That takes 3 months only. In case of women, we are doing from tender stage onwards. It reaches very fast, and conclusion also fast. Once you got an order, we will reach very quickly, and commercial also we are concluding very fast. This is one of the change where we have to look for. Otherwise, then yes, whatever you said, all these three will happen. Definitely will happen. But I understand in domestic also they started doing that way recently. So this is not we are not doing. We are doing it. This in certain countries, but in certain countries we are not doing it. That is one of the major issues. Due to various resource constraints. There are various reasons behind it, but due to various resource constraints, we are not doing it. But I think we need to do by certain power stage. Then only it is possible.
Okay. Thanks.
We can reach it quickly.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Ramesh here.
Yeah.
I have also worked in UAE before, and what the MTP said makes a lot of sense. If somebody has reached 70-80% in that subject, and if he has to continue next to 20%, convert it into an order, and then you hand over that order to the project management team for execution. That saves a lot of time rather than starting from zero by a new person all over.
Yes.
That's very important practice that we have to follow across all the projects. Yes.
Yes. So those are the kind of
time-consuming aspects, like all these major equipments of substations, GIS substation.
Right. So precisely to your point, Ramesh, those are the items that we need to brainstorm when we get into the solution phase. That will be very useful. And if we find it interesting in terms of its implementation and attractive in terms of its benefits, then definitely we should pursue that and go for it.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you. So with that, we come back to the main session, and one more slide, and then we take a break, and that is on the project charter. What is the charter? As I said to you, it brings in the business case. How strong is the business need for executing this project? When I say the project, it is not about the client project. It is about the improvement opportunity. So that is what is called as a project in the charter sense. But however, if your entire business opportunity itself is an improvement initiative or a new initiative, you could still classify that in this window. The whole point is, especially for regions, as you said, we are new in terms of establishing ourselves there. Those could be seen as strong business cases. So the business cases is where we typically discuss the opportunity there. I mean, in terms of what needs to be carried out and how aligned is this with the overall vision of the organization. And here we talk about an opportunity. We talk about the pain. What is the gap to the customer expectations? As the gap could be in terms of the time. So it is taking 12 months now. I want to bring it down to 9 months or 6 months, and that is what the gap analysis would reveal. And what is not meeting the customer needs? So today, if I am not meeting customer needs, it's not sufficient. If you say that no, I am not meeting the customer needs, and it needs to go up or down. But we need to precisely identify using a tool. This is generally used in the context of customer needs analysis. So that is the whole point. And then we have a goal statement and a project scope. So the goal statement is you must have heard of SMART goals. So basically that's exactly what the goal statement is all about. It should be specific, measurable, then attainable, relevant, time bound, and then so on. So that is something which the goals should not be like, I would like to improve this process. Improvement of a timeline or reduction of a timeline would mean by how much? That is the next question. So it's not like an improvement in a generic sense. We are looking at improvement with quantitative data. We are looking at cost cutting with a specific measure or specific percentage, and that is what we want to characterize this goal. So, and for a goal statement, there are some influencing factors. Those are called as X generally, and those are the factors or levers which we would use to describe the goal statement. And then project scope. So the project is only for Tanzania. Then we'll say that Tanzania is only to the boundaries. The geographical boundaries are where this process or this project is applicable. All the other geographies are out of the scope as far as this improvement is concerned. And then we have project plan, which is a very high-level plan. So when will you execute or complete the plan phase? When will you complete the do phase? When will you complete the check phase and act phase, and so on? And so overall completions, people get a snapshot of when you are likely to complete the project. And then the team selection, the team members who are responsible with roles and responsibilities. And again, what is the role of the process owner? What are the specific responsibilities for the process owner? Are the key stakeholders identified for the team? So this is essentially the elements of the 6-blocker charter, which is usually finalized prior to the start of the plan phase and discussed during plan phase. At the end of the plan phase, it is revisited. It is revisited with only one objective, that if there is a scope change, and you can't keep changing the scope every day. It has to stabilize at some point in time. Otherwise, we are chasing a moving target. I don't think that is possible. So with that only, we have put the the item on project scope. Okay. So with that, this is the charter, and then this is just a sample charter for the PTND that we created long back. So this is something which we will do for each one of the teams that we are going to workshop with. So we'll not get into the details of this charter, but then we will do it with yours when we do yours. And already one is ready is good to go for the Monday session. So that we will be sharing all the proceedings with the team. So with that, we get into the last part of the first half, which is the Kano model or analysis, which is very, very critical. When you talk about customer specification, we talk about, whether the customer is satisfied or not satisfied. How do you know whether the customer is satisfied or not satisfied? Are we studying the expectations clearly? So there is something which is called as nominal expectations. So that is a minimal expectations in terms of quality or service or in terms of this satisfaction level. Then there is normal quality, that is like want satisfiers, which is normal to expect. and then there is excitement, which is like very specific. So these are the three elements on which the customer, the analysis is done. And so the example related to the home buyers, you will say that the home buyers, I assume that it meets all federal, state, and local building codes. When there is expectation, normal expectation that you have safety codes for buildings, it is normally expected that you will follow those, and there is absolutely no violation of those. And if I meet those federal requirements, and there is nothing, that is like an expected one. And as far as the normal quality is concerned, in this particular example, the 3-car garage, 3 bedrooms, and 2 baths is considered as a normal quality. And a lifetime guarantee or warranty for on the roof would mean it's a delighter as far as the customer is concerned. So precisely identifying the customer requirements would put the project team in a winning position from the point of view that the product or the service that we are trying to deliver is going to satisfy the client in a very high manner. I would still use a subjective rating of high, medium, low, because that is typically what is used to for the customer satisfaction analysis, requirements analysis, what satisfies the customer or dissatisfies the customer, and so on. And here in this there is a time axis which is showing the gray line which is going down. And for those who are trying to analyze this, so can you tell me what this gray line represents? The gray arrow that is pointing downwards to the time level. It's not lunch break yet. Anybody?
Maybe by looking into... Yeah, somebody.
Yes, Srinivas? You were saying something?
I was trying to say, maybe by looking into these aspects, the overall process time, what you are doing, may come to a reduced manner by looking into each and every aspect. Maybe that is what it is projecting.
Okay. So in the as we are pressed for time, thanks for it, Srinivas, for that. I will myself explain this to you. See, what happens typically is today, whatever is excited. So we look at this example of home buyers in US. One example I just took from a paper. So here we are looking at lifetime warranty on the roof. So that is exciting to me for the first time when I buy the house. But next time onwards, that becomes that exciting will shift to normal, and eventually it will shift to the expected quality. If you don't give me the warranty, I will not buy. So that is what it means. So typically, whatever is the exciting factor which we think it is exciting the customer today, over as the time goes. So we are in 2020 right now. There may be many exciting factors which would determine, the client excitements. So once we decide, once we objectively identify, once we have some measurements against it, once we have done the survey and understood the customer requirements very well, then we know that the excitement, whatever the excitement quality or whatever the excitement needs of the customer that we identified will become the expected requirements as time goes. So today we are explaining this or carrying out this project in Tanzania. You can think about it, and tomorrow, Monday, when we do this exercise, you will be ready with what is expected, what is normal and exciting. But mark my words today that whatever you mark as exciting today, in 2 years or less than that, you will see that, oh, you gave me this lifetime warranty on the roof. I thought I was going to expect it. It suddenly shifts, gear. So that is something which you need to be aware of, and we need to be careful in terms of what we promise that we are going to give in these, in this 3 categories. So that is the Kano model. It's a very, very powerful model. It's a Japanese invention. Again, to understand thoroughly the customer needs. So this goes across sectors. It's not specific to manufacturing industry. It's not specific to apparels or any of those. It is general. It can be applied equally well to the across industries. As simple as it looks. it is very easy to use tool. But more complex variations, mathematical treatments exist beyond the scope of this training. But the sum and substance of this is that we have hundreds of customer requirements that is flowing in on a daily basis. We have to categorize them. What is the tool? This is the tool. So that is the with the point. And with that, I will just play 10 seconds or maybe 1 minute video for you to have a look at it. Please.
Sir,
Yeah?
one question. This model, how it is related with the EPC contractor? Because we are the EPC contractor, our role is to do the job as per the defense specification only. I can't predict that after 2 years this will come down, and today itself I have to think about future, and I have to make sure the customer get the exciting quality one. How it is related with EPC contractor?
Right. So it all depends on who is your customer. That is exactly what this is all about. So if the customer does not result, I mean, if it is not going to be a excitement, or if it is not going to happen that way, or if there is no other normal requirements where it's only whatever is said, it's only the expected. How open is the organization to consider the other?
I'll reiterate my question again. See, now I deliver the project today. Later, after 2 years, the customer may think that you would have done better, something like that. So, what is my role? My role is to deliver what was the specification required for. I don't need to predict that I need to satisfy the customer in an exciting manner. I'll give some better one more than the specification, something like that. Is it not that, right?
Not better one in terms of specification, but there are various ways in which, say for example, you in terms of the timeline, you look at the timeline, time delays are total dissatisfiers, right? Agreed?
Yes.
Yeah, you deliver a project, let us say in 3 months' time.
Okay.
So let us assume that the customer and you agreed that okay, you will deliver in 3 months. What if it takes 6 months? Will you think the customer will be happy?
Yeah, that will be different class, sir. That will have contractual process.
That's what I'm saying. So this is not specific to.
We are talking about only quality. I assume that quality in terms of product or the deliverable.
No. Nothing. So it's not about a product or anything. It is in general. The word quality is used. It doesn't mean that it's the quality of a product. It just means that the overall quality in the sense that you are deliverable. That's it. Whatever be the deliverable.
Okay.
So it is just to classify them. It is not to. Your question is well taken. I mean, if you are going to deliver on something, if there is no need for you to consider the other ones, exciting or the normal, depends on your customer segment. That is fine. But when we are discussing about, let us say, delivering the overall project and looking at the delays that is happening on a project-to-project basis, then arresting those delays will definitely would lead to at least the normal expectations or the exciting ones, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not specific. When the word quality, that don't get carried away by that, thinking that we are talking about only product quality here.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, my name is Sujan. For this Prabhu's concern, I just want to tell one small incident. In Qatar, the substation project of Karama, like in 2009 when I started working in that project, there for the basement sleeves, the cable sleeves, those sleeves are very critical area for water ingress. Okay. So when I started working in 2008, there was no such system adopted to control this water ingress. Okay. Now, slowly in one project, it has been adopted. It is by the contractor itself. Like us, we have adopted the soluble water bar around the sleeves, and the sleeves was bell mouth. And when that worked well, Karama has introduced the same thing in their specification from the next onwards. I think what you are going to explain in that way, that probably that the solution was wow, but now it came to a expected quality, and it is part of the specification itself.
Yeah.
So So what Prabhu wants to say for an EPC and these things, I think this is a classic example of these things, that it started with exciting quality or something, and then it turned into expected quality.
Yes, that's a good one, Sujan.
No, but other way also, customer will come to know this. When they found a problem, definitely they will start analyzing, and they will also try to find a solution for it. Then they will improve their specification. Please don't think that it is other way also. None of the customers are going to live with the problems continuously, right? So they will improve their specification. Definitely it will come up.
You mean the solution? What you're trying to tell is that the customer proposes a new solution.
Just you're saying, okay, we have proposed. Next time the customer has come up as in improvement in specification.
Yeah.
See, otherwise also when water is entering inside the basement, the customer will think this is an issue. Then you will start analyzing the problem where it is. Then you will try to find a solution. Today, various methods are available to find a solution. So they will try to find a solution and improve their specifications. And it is at least better for us. Earlier, we might have incurred cost because we are doing it. And today, everybody have to do it. Everybody have to provide a cost. So it's an improvement on both sides. It's
so
like
we are talking about segmenting the customer requirements. I mean, that is the thing. So that is the only difference. Okay. So thanks a lot. I think it's 2:00 here local time. So Alok, are we okay? Are we good to go for a 45-minute break? Would that help in addressing the lunch part of it for everyone, or how do we plan?
Sir, for everyone, it is too early yet, but
okay.
I take your own decision, sir, because you are going to present. So how it will fit the second half, you can take your decision.
No, I mean you can tell me 5 o'clock. We have TMD joining us, right? So I want to be done with most of this session, and in between, if we take a long break, then closer to 5, that's not acceptable. Meaning it will when he's there, I would like this participants to be here. So. Okay. So, what is the? That is the challenge that we have. I am okay to go up to, let us say, 2:30 and try to finish most of or some more portions, if that is okay. Otherwise, we take a break and then come back sharp at 2:45. There are 57 participants, and I would like all of them to be back at that time.
Yeah. I think Rajan sir can. Tell us if he is comfortable in their region, and Sanjay sir.
No, Alok, we have to follow some times norms. There is no issue at all. Okay, we all can have our lunch at the table itself.
Yeah.
Some sort of ready-made lunch, and let us proceed with the timings which has been defined.
This is an online session. We can have lunch along with the session. Also is okay, I think.
Okay, sir.
Okay. I think we will go with the timeline. What is already proposed.
11:30 is the time. We can take a break now.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So we will take a sharp 45-minute break. Let us assemble back at sharp 2:45. That is 45 minutes from now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Right.